Hi, I'm Phillip Jones. I'd like to talk a little bit about Smokenders. First of all, my smoking, I started smoking I think when I was a teenager, and I can remember those first few cigarettes, and the taste was absolutely horrible, and I started to feel very sick and dizzy. But all my friends were smoking, and it was important for me to get acceptance. So I tried my very hardest, and even though I just couldn't stand the taste, I just didn't understand why adults would want to have these sorts of things because the taste was horrible. It's amazing the things that I had to learn to become a smoker, and I didn't realise that it was quite a skill set that I picked up. The first thing, I wanted to make sure that I held the cigarette properly and that it looked good, it looked cool when I held it. And so I'd practice that in front of a mirror. You know, it's interesting that when you ask a person who's never smoked, you ask them to hold a cigarette, they won't hold it like we smokers do. They'll hold it something like this, and if it's lit, they'll hold it way away from them as though the cigarette doesn't belong to them, and their eyes will be sort of squinting. And there are other things that I wanted to do. I wanted to practice blowing smoke rings in the mirror because that would look cool. But I had to make sure I got it down pat before I would do it in front of my friends. And you know, I was if I was outdoors and I only had one match left, I was able to make sure that I got that cigarette alight without fail with just that one match on a windy day. And if there was a gas stove, I'd light it from the gas stove without seeing my hair alight. You know, people that don't smoke just don't have those skills. I tried so many different ways. I think I must have tried almost every way imaginable. And the one thing in common with all the attempts that I made was that they all led to failure. I tried the patches. I remember going to a pharmacist, and he took his job very seriously. He took me aside. He warned me under no circumstances was I to think that I was going to be able to continue smoking and use the patches as well. And I was a bit indignant about it, but I sort of followed his advice and stayed off the cigarettes and just used the patches. But then all of a sudden, just something went wrong. I had a very bad day, and when I had one of those very bad days, the only thing that was ever going to fix it was a cigarette. So patch or not, I had the cigarette and it was alight and smoking away. And I just knew then that the patches weren't going to work for me. And I tried these other methods. I tried cold turkey, but the pain of doing cold turkey, it was just so incredibly painful, and I just had cigarettes on my mind the whole day. I couldn't get them off my mind until eventually I was back smoking. And there were other ingenious schemes that I thought they were ingenious. I developed various different schemes. One of them was that I thought that I would just smoke one less cigarette each day. I'd start with about a packet of say 25, and then the next day I'd have one less, and it'd be so gradual that in 3 or 4 weeks I'd be down to about zero, and then I wouldn't notice. And I have to say that the scheme worked really well when it first started, and I was able to smoke 25, 24, 23. But it started to fall apart when I was getting down to the single figures, and then other things seemed to crop up, and always there was just be some drama, and it just didn't seem to be a good time to continue with that particular scheme. So I would immediately halt it and then have to face the embarrassment of telling friends and whatever that my very latest attempt hadn't worked and I'd failed again. And I felt each time I tried something new and failed, that a bit of my self-esteem would disappear, and it was making me feel uncomfortable and painfully embarrassing, so that future attempts I made sure that I wasn't going to tell a soul. I had come to the conclusion that I was just one of those people who was going to have to be a smoker for the rest of my life. I didn't think anything could work. So one day I was looking through the newspaper and I saw this advertisement, and it said smokers wanted. And it was the very first time I'd ever been wanted by virtue of the fact that I was a smoker. I couldn't believe it, and I became a bit curious. And I read further, and my hopes rose a little bit. It was the first time in quite a while that I just wondered if maybe this would work. So I did go to the information talk, and I heard a lot of good things, and I thought, yes, I will give it a go. I signed up to the program. It's one of the best decisions I've made. It changed my life from being a person who thought I could never quit smoking. I now had a method that was going to work for me. I couldn't believe it wasn't a last resort. Like, I thought that this would be the most painful way, but in fact it was the easiest way. Even though it was the last method I tried, it was the easiest, most comfortable way. And they taught me something very invaluable at Smokenders. They taught me how to be happy as a non-smoker. And that to me was what was so important, what was fundamentally important.